Can you start a podcast with me, please? I need something to do.
Send it out in front of Malkin to save. They score! Elias Lindholm looks to the heavens.
Here's a chance. Potter right in, and goalie scores. Oh my, what a move by the rookie.
2-on-1. Pastrnak moving in with Marchand. Get it to it. Score!
The zone. Coyle dances in. Backhand score!
Lindholm right wing corner. Pastrnak is there. He scores! David Pastrnak wins it for Boston.
Welcome in, everyone, to a special edition of Bruins Tape to Tape. I'm your host today, Caroline, and I am joined by my lovely co-host, Maria, as always. Hello. How's it going?
Hello. It's always great to jump on the screen and talk a little hockey.
Absolutely. And if you're watching on YouTube, and if you can't see, obviously listening in, we have another special guest, Amy Johnson from Canadiens Connection podcast, to come and talk a little bit about the Habs, our storied rival. Welcome in, Amy.
Thank you so much, Caroline and Maria. It's really exciting to be here. I can't wait to chat about Bruins and Habs today.
I know.
Hopefully we'll still be friendly foes by the time this conversation is over.
I think we can succeed at that.
I think you're right.
Absolutely. Well, and it's funny because Maria and I were obviously not the same age. And so I think her feelings towards the Montreal Canadiens and their fans is a little bit different than my feelings. I'm of a more recent generation. And so I have spent most of my time hating the Toronto Maple Leafs. But I have a healthy respect for the traditional rivalry. I grew up in a Bruins home, so I know I have respect for it. But you guys have also been having a similar season to us. And so I feel like we can have kind of a let's cry on each other's shoulders kind of situation.
A little bit.
We've been spending some of our special episodes this season chatting with some original Six rival fan groups because a bunch of us are in a very similar boat this season. It's the wild roller coaster of emotions that is the wild card in the East this year. And a lot of teams either that have been good in recent years, like the Bruins, like the Rangers, or other teams who maybe have been slowly climbing up that rebuild ladder, like Detroit and like the Habs. We've all kind of landed at the same point where there's levels of inconsistency. There's been questions about decisions made by maybe management. And so we would love to hear a little bit about the Habs story this season and how you guys got to where you are, because surprisingly, we are neck and neck. You are in the thick of it with us. So give us maybe a little bit of a rundown of what has this season been like for the Habs.
It's been a roller coaster. And if you had told me 4 months ago that the Habs would be sitting where they're at right now, I would have called you crazy because, fans have gone through the highest of highs and the lowest of lows so far, just in the first half of the season. I mean, they started the season with, I think, a good sense of hope in the preseason that, okay, this, they've gone through a few years of pain at the very start of this rebuild, and that maybe this was the year that they were going to start to turn the corner. Then Patrick Laine gets injured in preseason. And there goes all of the hope. They're just a
big piece of your hope right there.
Yeah,
exactly. So it all comes crashing down with Laine getting injured. And then what ensued for the first 2 months of the season was some of the most horrendous hockey, I think, that even they had seen in their own performances. It was, I mean, there were times week to week on our podcast, we track how many points, what the percentage of making the chance of making the playoffs are. I mean, they were 31st, 32nd in the league. It looked like, oh, okay, well, I guess this is going to be another year to try to go for another top 5 draft pick again next year. And then suddenly December rolled around they started playing all of these top teams around the league on the road, Stanley Cup champions in the last few years, and they started winning night after night after night after night. And they went on this big hot streak. And so then it put them in the can they make the playoffs talk. And so, they sort of exceeded expectations during those 6 weeks. And now they've kind of hit another hiccup in the road because they've lost 3 of their last 5. And so they're finding that inconsistency is coming back in, and there's questions of, are they tired? Is fatigue setting? Is the schedule too much of a grind? Those kinds of things. To me, what it translates to is exactly the progression that you expect a young rebuilding team to go through, that there's going to be good days.
Ebb and flow. It's an ebb and flow.
Yeah. There's going to be good days and weeks and months, and there's going to be bad days and weeks and months. And all of that's okay as long as a lessons learned on those bad days and weeks and months. And they use that to then progress forward so that the next time they have a bad day or week or month, it's not quite as bad as the last one that they had. Exactly. So it's been a wild ride so far this year. Our most recent episode of the podcast was, kind of now what is the playoffs still going to be a question? Can they get back into a consistent winning pattern? Is it going to change things for the trade deadline? There's all sorts of questions.
I was just going to ask that question. Do you have any, expectations, thoughts? Should your team be buyers to some degree? Because we've had, similar conversations, and we haven't, taken a deep dive into that quite yet. But I'm just curious how other teams who are, clearly in, maybe call it a soft rebuild, not a total full rebuild, but, hard for a GM to make a determination about what to do or not do.
As my co-host Rick put it on last week's show, he put out the call to Ken Hughes, don't be seduced by making a crazy transaction at the trade deadline. And that's kind of where I'm at as well. I take I'm happy to hear Ken Hughes and Jeff Gorton say over and over and over again this year, we're not going to deviate from our plan. And I'm really wanting to trust them that they're not going to deviate from the plan by selling off some big potential young pieces of the roster that are going to play a big role in another year or 2 or 3. Now, in more recent weeks, Jeff Gorton's appeared on some media outlets and talked about how they have been winning. Maybe we take a look at the trade deadline if there's a piece that could help them that wouldn't cause us to give up the pieces that we don't want to give up and keep the plan basically in place, that they would maybe consider that. So for me at the trade deadline, I'd like to see them instead of looking to be a buyer, I'd rather them kind of just stay the course. If an opportunity presents itself that they don't have to give up a top prospect or things like that, or a core piece, then that would be fine. I would rather see them be active sellers, especially on the back end. David Savard, I would love to see them actually get something in return for David Savard instead of just not signing him again over the summer and losing him to free agency. I think there's contracts and players like that.
Got a couple of those on our. Well, yeah, the Bruins have more than one of those players. So yeah,
we got a lot.
Yeah,
well, that's really interesting. Your comment about hoping that they stay the course. I mean, as a Bruins fan and as a fan coming off of several very successful seasons, this is not meant to be insulting whatsoever, but I would have to imagine that a lot of Habs fans should feel really proud about and pleased with where they are right now, considering the seasons that they've had over the last couple of years. Of us as a duo, Maria is super entrenched in the Boston sports media world in her area, and my job is often to keep an eye out on what's going on around the league. I do my homework. I listen to my 32 thoughts and things. And so I hear about the things that are happening, and I've, kept an eye, and they've made a lot of those changes and invested in a lot of that youth. And it's clear that they have some kind of longer term plan. And it feels almost like they're a little bit ahead of the plan, at least right now in this moment. And the fact that they might actually have a shot at being real close. If they don't do it, it's real close, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's probably really a satisfactory situation for a lot of Habs fans. I
would
hope
agree
I'm
with you.
reading the room right.
I think you are reading the room right. I think I myself, objectively, I think I'm pleased with the progression that they've made. I'm pleased that they have stuck to their guns about development being prioritized. Most of the credential coverage that I do for our company is on the prospects. So I'm very big on development and prospects. And you have to give them time and you have to let them make mistakes and all of those kinds of things. And previous administrations were not doing that, whether it was at the GM level or the coaching level. So I'm happy to see that that's taking place. And I think that's a little bit why their youth movement has flourished a bit, because they are given responsibility. They are given time and space to learn. And I think that's playing dividends. In the AHL affiliate is absolutely knocking it out of the park this season. They're currently in the top 3 of the AHL. They're definitely going to go on a deep playoff run, most likely. And so there are a number of prospects there that are primed to compete for a spot next year. And they've got a number of top prospects in the NCAA and other leagues that may be coming into the pro ranks next year as well, who are also lighting things up. So the future is really bright. And I think the progression has been steady this year. I think particularly these last 6 weeks or so, fans are kind of getting their return on investment. All that pain that they've given out for the last couple of years, they're starting to get rewarded for it a little bit. Yeah. And I think that makes it very exciting for them.
Well, for me, fantastic. I think it's very important for the Montreal Canadiens franchise to be relevant again in the National Hockey League and to be competitive for a variety of reasons that, we don't have to go into great detail, because any of us who have been fans for years understand why it's important to have, the Montreal Canadiens be competitive and be a thorn once again in the side of the Boston Bruins or, other original 6 teams. There was no more iconic rivalry that I can remember in all of my years of watching hockey. Is that the comparison was the equivalent of Red Sox Yankees was Bruins Canadiens. And when I tell you they were bloodbaths back in the day, you'd want to talk about old time hockey. It was old time hockey. And quite often the Bruins were never on the winning side of that. It took many, many years and many years of me sitting in the TD Garden with a knot in the pit of my stomach every time there was a Bruins Habs game, because you just, you wanted the result that you wanted, but you just most times knew in your heart of hearts, these guys have our number. Like, it's just, we just can't seem to figure out how to beat them, except it finally happened in 2011.
Right.
Finally.
Exactly. So how confident are you feeling at this point about April and getting to the end? Because I think this year, so last year, I heard Elliot Friedman use an expression that we have kind of adopted in our Discord and even here. The wildcard race last year, he called it a doodlebug race, where it was almost like nobody wanted that spot. Like nobody would win. They couldn't do it. This year, it seems like it's the opposite, which is fantastic. And I think it's going to make for a really, really thrilling end of the season. So knowing that it's very likely to keep being this up and down. I mean, a win today for Boston might put them in 3rd place in the division, but then a win tomorrow by Ottawa puts the Bruins in the 2nd wild card. Like, it's so insane. So how are you feeling about the month of April based on how they're playing now and just kind of the overall vibe of how this team feels?
I think they have the ability within themselves to find that consistency again. They haven't always looked great in the last 2 weeks. If you'd asked me 3 weeks ago, I would have probably maybe been a bit more pessimistic, saying, I think people are going to get their hopes up, but I think they're going to fall short. The key thing that has changed for me is that they have finally done something that we here at Rocket Sports have been calling for them to do for over a year, and that is send Caden Primo back to the AHL.
I have heard this. I have heard, yes.
I have watched Caden Primo play every single professional game that he has played since he joined the AHL and his NHL games, and he is simply not technically at the level that he would need to be to play in the AHL. He's a very he gets in his head a lot. He's a very emotional goaltender. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's not a criticism, but he just hasn't developed the skill to be able to overcome a bad goal. And once he gets one, then he gets two, then he gets three. The speed of the game at the NHL level is just not always great for him. But then he goes down to the AHL every single time he gets sent down, and he does well. He's back in the AHL now for a few weeks, and he hasn't been beaten yet. And so they finally wisened up. I would have preferred to have seen them stay with Jake Allen and Sam Montembeault instead of trading Jake Allen last year, because I think Jake Allen would have been a better mentor for Sam Montembeault. Yeah. So Sam Montembeault is a decent goaltender, but I don't know that he can carry the load. The young man that they've brought up from Laval now, Jakub Dobeš, he had a tremendous rookie campaign in the second half of last year. The first half was a little rough as he adjusted to playing pro hockey in the AHL in his first year. But his second half, he really lit things up, and he just carried that on at the beginning of this AHL season. He looked great, and he has transitioned so well to the NHL. He looks like a seasoned pro. He is a really big kid. He takes up a lot of net. He is a very technical goaltender. And he, until they lost in overtime a couple of nights ago, he hadn't yet been beaten in the NHL. Wow. And he was the one who won against the Florida Panthers and the Colorado Avalanche. And I believe Vegas was in there. Yeah. He was the one winning those games, backstopping the Canadiens to the wins against the former Stanley Cup champions. So now that he is playing regularly with Sam Montembeault, I think that Sam Montembeault is going to have to get a little worried that he might lose some ground to Jakub Dobeš, because I think Dobeš could overtake him. Okay. And I think that having that kind of a goaltender, and at least that kind of a goaltending tandem in net, is giving the guys in front of them more confidence. Yes. And I think that additional confidence, particularly for the defense, will help them get back to that consistent playing again. So yeah. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'll say that. Cautiously optimistic.
How old is Montembeault? How long has he been around in the league? Or
I want to say he's 28.
He's older than I thought. Okay.
Yeah, he's 28. Okay. I remember kind of covering him at the AHL level when he was playing for Florida, and he was netminding for the Springfield Thunderbirds. He was very good at the AHL level, and he's a decent goaltender at the NHL level. I just don't think that he's what they need. Yeah. He's good for now during this part of the rebuild, but I think, Jakub Dobeš might be setting himself up. Jacob Fowler, who is one of the Hobey Baker, he's on the Hobey Baker ballot for Boston College this year, is another goaltender who's coming through the ranks, who could turn pro soon for the Canadiens, who we think is going to really light things up. So we'll see. We'll see.
You guys are, it sounds like you're in a prime position to really move forward. The Bruins have nobody in the hopper. They were the only pro team not to send somebody, I think, to World Juniors.
Yes.
Oh my.
I
don't know that I realized that.
The worst prospect pool in the NHL at this juncture. So, that that leaves a lot of questions unanswered here in Boston in terms of, what is the future direction of the franchise, right? Because they've been trying to build a team in a certain manner for a number of years. And, maybe we sound, like spoiled brats, and we have had competitive teams. We have had competitive teams. We had a team that was historic and that got bounced in the first round of the playoffs. So, Don Sweeney, to his credit, did what he needed to do and went all in that year. But again, we got bounced in the first round. You have let go 3 very successful coaches during this period of time who have gone elsewhere and been
Very
successful. And won the Stanley Cup. So, we've had our own questions here about where are we going? What are we doing? Is it now time to look at a different plan? Because the plan that you have mapped out, while yes, during the regular season, you're one of the better teams in the league. But then when it comes to the nitty-gritty of playoff time, I'd rather be sitting in the garden in June as opposed to being done in May.
Yeah.
Because we've been disappointed for what one reason or another. So there's been conversation about, is it time? Because
so let me ask you, I'm going to turn it around on you ladies. Let me ask you this from a fan's emotional standpoint. Are you prepared to take on the pain that a true rebuild would take?
I can speak for me personally. I think at this juncture, yes, because I've seen enough of a sample size now of what we've been doing that doesn't get you what you want, which is a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That should be the only goal.
It should be the only goal. It shouldn't be. And we hear ownership say the right thing. We hear management say the right thing, but then we don't see the results, right?
Yeah.
And so at some point you have to reassess how you're doing things and how you're building your roster. Playoffs. We're talking about playoffs. You bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is key to winning in the playoffs, and you can score big by betting on them at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score 6. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
Hey, Bruins fans, have you gotten your gear for the Four Nations Face-Off yet? There's still time to show your support for your favorite Bruins playing this month. Shop the NHL store with us by clicking the link in our show notes and get free shipping on orders of $24 or more now through February 7th. Yeah, I think the point where we are right now, what we see as a team, I've called it it's the death by 1,000 cuts, because it's been a lot of gradual missteps and things that just weren't handled maybe necessarily in the right way from the GM perspective over the course of probably the last 5 or 6 years. And the other thing is, like, obviously it would be painful and it would hurt. But if management came out and said, we're doing this, right? I think, Maria, you said a number of years ago, the New York Rangers management came out and said, look, we're doing this. It's going to
the letter to their fans.
But
Jeff
we're going to get through this.
Jeff Gorton said that to the Rangers fans.
Yes.
And Jeff Gorton told the Montreal Canadiens fans the same thing when he came from the Rangers.
Just be honest with us. We see,
and I can handle it.
We see, we're knowledgeable. We understand.
Mm-hmm.
And but that you have to make tough decisions in order to replenish your prospect pool. Right? Nobody wants anything that the Bruins have down in the NHL right now because it's of no value to them. What you have of value is on your current roster, which means you might have to make some very difficult decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But they're decisions that somebody needs to have the stones to make. And if it's not Don Sweeney and Cam Neely, then they need to step aside to allow someone else to make those decisions, because I don't know how you rebuild your prospect pool if you aren't willing to move something that someone else may value who might give you the return that you're looking for.
And they've been delaying the inevitable for probably 5 years since the Bruins lost in the Stanley Cup final in 2019. You know, I'm sure you've seen this over the last, 20, 25 years in the league. It's no longer a league because of the salary cap and all of that. It's no longer a league where you can build a dynasty like what we used to see. Even,
the Blackhawks and the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Or even, the Red Wings and the Penguins from earlier
the
on.
Canadiens,
because of
during their days. Yeah.
Because of that, the salary cap and the parity that we now see in the league, like, they can't keep these guys they can't keep the band together as long as they used to be able to, right? And so the Bruins have been just kicking the can down the road since 2008, when that was the last time they threw everything out and they said to Patrice Bergeron, we're building a team around you. They got rid of everybody. And they brought it up to 2006, because that's when they brought in Chara and all these guys. Mm-hmm. The Bruins, I feel like, are the only team of what I would call modern day dynasties that hasn't really gone through that difficult rebuild. Because look at Chicago, look at Detroit, look at the Penguins. Like, the Rangers have done it. Like, the Bruins haven't yet. And so they've got one guy left.
I'm not sure which it is. I'm not sure which it is anymore. I really think they had convinced themselves that they would get, after 2011, that they would get 1 or 2 more Stanley Cups, which would have garnered them some additional goodwill and maybe, some additional longevity and patience with the fan base. But that didn't come to fruition. So when you keep, the definition of insanity is when you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and the result doesn't change. Mm-hmm. And I sound like, a spoiled New England fan. Yes, the team has been good for a lot of years, but I want more Stanley Cups.
Yeah. I think it's more painful to watch a team. It's more painful to watch a team where everyone says, but they're so good on paper. We got all the right guys. And it's like, let's just call it what it is. Like, this is not working anymore. The relationship is dead. Let's move on. So you're probably in a better place than we are, emotionally, mentally at this point.
Well,
in the
because
season.
the Band-Aid's been ripped off and you're healing, right? You know, you're healing. Whereas we are feeling like, is it time to maybe start peeling some of the Band-Aid off, right? To put together a different type of recipe here, because the recipe that, you know, you have been using over and over again for years is starting to wear. It's starting to wear.
And really the best thing, once that Band-Aid gets ripped off, and this is kind of the thing that we tell our listeners constantly over and over and over again, in particular over the last few years, is just be prepared to have to be really self-disciplined with your patience, because it's going to be really easy to get tempted after a season and a half and they go on a little hot streak for a month to say, okay, they're fine now. Throw in the towel, rebuild's over. Let's just throw all the money at them and let's go win a Stanley Cup. And unfortunately, a true rebuild can't do that. And I think Habs fans have actually been better at this than I anticipated them being, because it's a very demanding market. They want a Stanley Cup. They haven't had a Stanley Cup since 1993. It is so long overdue. But I think they understood what was at stake. I think they understood and bought into what Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes had laid out as a plan and said, okay, show us. And so we'll see. Yeah. This is where, when this 6 weeks that they've been playing really well, this is where I get nervous that people are going to start saying, okay, let's let the rebuild be over. And not quite yet.
Right.
Not quite yet.
So, we'll wrap this up because we all have hockey to watch. But my last question is, thinking about the final weeks, what are the things you just want to see from the team? What are you hoping to see?
I think I just want to see them, and I kind of alluded to this before, I want to see them keep learning from the lows so that their highs can get higher. I'd like to see them regain their confidence that they had in December. They had a lot of swagger in December. And I'd like to see them consistently bringing that every night, so that even if they lose a game trying, like they've left it all out on the ice. I want to see them continue to try. And as long as they do that, I think they're set up for success. Then it's management's responsibility during free agency and the offseason, put things in place, get ready for what should be a very big step forward next year. Ivan Demidov is going to arrive from Russia, from the KHL. That is going to be another gigantic piece of the puzzle. And there's going to be even more prospects that are ready to take on a bigger role. And so I think for me, the playoffs would be nice this year. But what I'd love, for me, success this season would be that they have put themselves in exactly the right position to set themselves up for a very big, successful season next year. And that's not necessarily winning the cup next year, but that they've taken a significant step forward next year.
I just have just a quick question for you, because I'm curious on, do they have their coach? Is Marty St. Louis the coach for this group?
Oh boy, I might have to go hide.
What did you do, Maria?
I've been dying to ask that.
It is well recorded on all of our podcasts and some of my other content on YouTube that I did not agree with the hiring of St. Louis when he was hired.
I found it curious myself. Found it curious myself.
However, I did feel that he was the right coach for the first 2 seasons that he was there, in helping guys like Cole Caulfield find their inner confidence in their game again. He was, I think he injected a good boost into the youth on that bench for the first 2 seasons. Now I think it's time to move on. And we've talked about this on the podcast quite a bit. And we even said this a few seasons ago when he was hired. This might be fine for right now while the bulk of the team is learning how to be an NHL team.
Yeah.
But in order for them to take a legitimate step forward and be a contender perennially, they are going to need a coach who has the experience behind the bench of what it takes to get through the playoffs. And Marty simply doesn't have that experience.
I thought Marty was basically a placeholder coach.
Yes.
Right. Knowing and understanding what was happening there, to the credit, of the organization and their fan base, to have the patience and the guts, right? To go through a rebuild. And I thought, I just don't know if he's going to be the guy to take them into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been good for morale, both I think in the locker room and for the fan base. He's very popular with a lot of fans. He's obviously popular with a lot of players. He's very enigmatic. He's charismatic. He's always got a great quote for the media. And so all of that kind of goes into rebuilding the conversations that are taking place around the team as well, from the media and the fans and so forth. And I'm fine with all of that. But yes, I do believe that they'll need to find someone else to complete the rebuild for them to actually turn into a contender every spring.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, right?
Oh, yes.
Because to your point, right, when you say, the experience of this season should take the group into next season. Mm-hmm. And then if those results don't come to fruition, and we've seen that happen here in Boston on more than one occasion, the first person that you look at, whether or not it's fair and it's just, is the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And they will not want to fire Marty St. Louis.
Who would want to fire Marty?
No one wants to be that person.
They're not going to want to do that.
Right.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Share with our listeners how they can find you.
Well, I don't know that this is going to endear me any more than being the host of a Canadiens podcast is to all of your listeners and viewers. But in terms of hockey, so I work as a Canadiens reporter. I'm a fan of the Flyers. So I don't know if that helps. I think that's going to be a double whammy against me.
I don't know, but
I love John Tortorella. So
no, I do
we love
too.
Torts and we love Gritty. So that's fine.
No, I only say that to preface. If you want to find me on X, my handle there is @FlyersRule. So, and so everyone always says, wait a minute, you're a Habs reporter. I'm like, yeah, but I live in Pennsylvania and I'm a lifelong Flyers fan. So you can find me @FlyersRule. You can find our podcast. It's actually right down here under my name. @Habs Connection is our podcast. We always have an objective view. We are not haters. We invite people from any fan base in the NHL. And yes, that even means Boston Bruins fans. So give us a listen.
That is awesome.
Well, you have two new Boston fans, so thank you very much for joining us.
You guys have a Habs fan.
Absolutely. Well, as always, thanks again for listening. Make sure you like and review the podcast to help us get out to more listeners. And you can find us on all of our socials @Tape2Tape MK. And any final words, Maria?
Just go Bees. And let's go Habs. We gotta bring back the old time hockey.
Bring back the rivalry.
Let's get the rivalry going. That's right.